Model Resource and Video. IDT 7074, Fall 2014. Rick Stern. Gagne's 9 Events of Instruction. Overview. Robert Gagne was an amazing man. His years as a scholar, instructor, researcher, and author were productive in every element of instruction. The element I wish to discuss is his 9 steps of instruction model for instructional design. This is, for me, the terminal end of his work. This is where the rubber hits the road. Instructors can use this as a guide to design instructions for lessons. It addresses both the content and the learners with their varying aspects of ability and desire. Let's start by looking at this process. He condensed his insights of learning by designing a lesson outline. His first event or step is to gain attention. This is an important first step. The learner needs to be motivated in some manner to be receptive to this instruction and new information. We can do this by asking a probing question or commanding the class's attention. The second event is informing the learner of the objective. This entails pre-framing the learner so they are aware of information which will help them attain the goal of the lesson. They find out what is to be gained. The students need to be apprised of the lesson objectives. This event lets their minds be awake to science's signals of the goals that will be accomplished. In the third event, we stimulate the student's recall of prior learning. This assists the learner in hooking new knowledge onto an existing base. Either a previous skill or experience will help them assimilate the new knowledge into their long-term memory. Discussions about past experiences can help at this time. Now we enter the fourth event by presenting the content. The content can vary as to its relation to the goals. For example, information acquisition is presented differently than for intellectual skills or motor skills. This content should be presented in an organized fashion using different media varieties. The fifth provides learning guidance. This will also vary according to how the desired outcome is defined. You can accomplish this by indicating what actions are required to successfully perform this new objective. There's an underlying goal of transferring the information or skill into long-term memory. This is where the cognitive tricks come into play. The instructor may choose graphics, color coding, videos, or mnemonics to help shift this information for future retrieval. In the sixth event, we are eliciting performance. If the first 5 steps have been successful, then this event is designed to allow the learner to perform. This performance practice can be either for themselves or for the instructor. This practice allows the learner to confirm their understanding of the new objective and provides the practice to help prove retention. His 7th event provides feedback. The learner needs to receive feedback on their performance. This can be an affirmation or in the form of constructive correction. Other learners may also have a chance to ask questions or review their performance at this stage. The 8th event will be assessing the performance. Once the learner has performed in a correct manner, it is time for them to be formally assessed. They need to perform the new skill without coaching. Just because they can perform it now does not necessarily mean it is locked away for the future yet. Event 9 is where we enhance retention and transfer. This final event has actually been initiated in earlier ones. This can be simulations for the different desired outcomes. Look for ways for the learner to apply their lessons. We want the student to use this skill in order to put in long-term memory for future retrieval. If they do not use it, they may lose it. If they have shifted this information into permanent storage, they may apply these skills into new problem-solving situations. These 9 steps are an outline for a model that can and was used with paper, pencils, and blackboards. It has lasted from its initial inception during World War II into present times with computer and multimedia applications. The base concepts are rugged enough to adapt to developing technologies because the developer researched the human element. It is flexible enough to be a viable model for all aspects of education, the business world, as well as government and military instructions. One of the reasons this model is so widely cited is that Gagne has based this model on the expansive elements of his research over many years. An example of to what length he applied his research would be that he goes as far as to define the steps for planning instruction. There happens to be 9 steps for this also. First, identify the types of desired outcomes. Each may have a required skill or knowledge. Next, we must identify the internal conditions the learner must possess for successful achievement of the outcomes. Then the external conditions need to be addressed. We must also specify the learning content. We need to make records of the learner's characteristics. The 6th step is to decide on the media of instruction. Then we must devise a plan on how to motivate the learners. Next, it is important to test the instruction with a small group of learners as a type of formative assessment. Finally, after the instruction, there must be some form of summative evaluation to determine the effectiveness of the lesson. Let's talk about the history. This model is the culminating result of years of study and research by Robert Gagne. The initial design steps were used in a very behaviorist manner needed for the training of pilots in World War II. The use of stimuli and response can still be observed in the present-day outline. As he continued his research and developed his theory of learning, the model was adjusted. In its initial form, it would be used as a paper, pencil, and blackboard instruction. This model is adjusted as his research findings support more cognitivist approaches of human learning. As the advances in research-based instructional theory were applied, the model became more aligned with the prominent trains of thought. The design adapted ways to approach and apply the current knowledge of the times. The present model is being implemented in all the current technology available to universities around the world. The beauty of the 9 events model as it occurs now is its ability to transcend whatever technological advances are on the horizon. Computer-based instruction and all types of mixed media presentations will only enhance the learning proposed by use of this model. The basic tenets are human-based, thus the learner remains the same no matter the technology. Gagne's 9 events of instruction, let's talk about the key persons. The key person involved with this model is Robert Gagne. We can gather from his work, the body of research from his years, and the great people he was surrounded by in this field, that there was significant influence from others as its design development progressed. He was born in the year 1916 in Massachusetts. He had studied at Yale and Brown University before teaching in Connecticut. His teaching was interrupted by World War II. He cut his teeth scoring aptitude tests for pilots training in the Air Force. After the war ended, he went back to teaching. The Armed Services did call him back to be a research director. After several years of practical application with the Air Force, he returned to academia and continued his research at Princeton. During the next several years, he did research and published books on the subject of learning by producing The Conditions of Learning. His gradual shift in thinking from the behaviorist camp to a more cognitive approach happened over time. There is evidence that leaves no doubt that he and his contemporaries, Bloom, Ausubel, and Driscoll, to name just a few, collaborated and shared their ideas. While he published his findings as early as 1965, he updated his books as his research continued to offer new and updated findings. This did not happen in a vacuum. During these years, research on the human learning experience was becoming more and more well-defined. The different factors involved in successfully transferring knowledge and skills were addressed, and the models of instruction were changing. Gagne's 9 steps of instruction are the culmination of his years of study and observations, as well as collaborations with some of the most noted names in the field of educational theory. Now, how is this model different? Gagne's model is different than most models I've experienced. His model is based on his very own research on human learning theory. He started as a test evaluator for pilots in World War II using basic behaviorist methods. This formed the base of his model application experience. The current model is a result of years of his research and collaboration. I would suggest that the model was living because it addresses and includes so many of the current cognitive methods of instruction that we are familiar with now. Many models are shortened versions of what I see in this model. In the comparisons, I recognize where elements are squeezed together. Gagne went to extremes to define each of the steps identified by his research. They follow a certain well-defined learning process that this model is based upon. While comparable models are effective, their reduced number of steps seem to be his 9 steps compacted into smaller form. Thank you for your time.